Swarzy here for the Kiss Haunted House. Swarzy here for the Kiss Couch, here for the Kiss House Party Live. What's happening, guys? Swarzy here with Sam and Dave.
Swarzy here for Kiss FM UK.
Come with me, come with me, come with me. Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Swarzy. I am a radio presenter over at Kiss. I hold down the breakfast show on a Saturday morning from 6 to 9 a.m, so it's very, very early. Friday mornings are gone. I actually went to a party on a Friday night and I finished at like 3:30, and then I had to make it into radio for like 4:30, and I thought, I'm not going home, I'm just gonna go straight, and then I just went straight. So yeah, so Friday nights are slightly like cancelled, but on a night out, it's not too bad. And then I hold down the evening shows as well. So Monday to Thursday, Kiss Fresh New Music Nights is 1 hour of music, all things new, and Wednesday and Thursday are the hip hop and R&B nights, so it's actually quite cool. I did not get into radio the conventional way at all. I won a competition called the Kiss Chosen One in 2016. And so every year, bar last year, Kiss do an annual competition and look for a new presenter. So my background's in presenting. My background is very much this, with people that are tangible, not in a studio where there's no one there and just microphones, so completely the opposite. And yeah, it's a glass box in Westfield in Stratford, and you go in and everyone is lining up that you're obviously, it's like X Factor, you're trying to, get your sob story right and just like try and get your head in the game. And then you go in, you get a little piece of paper that's like a script. I memorized because I was quite quick on the ball with it, but many people didn't. And you didn't have to, but I was just quick with the script. And then they'd ask you questions, you'd have to kind of shine through with your personality. Lo and behold, at the end of the day, I thought, no way am I gonna get this, because one, I've never studied radio. I don't even know what a radio studio looks like. I don't know what these buttons do, like count me out sort of thing. But by the end of the day, they rang me the following week or so and said, you've made it into the top 20. And I was like, you must have got the wrong girl, my friend, because no way have I made it into the top 20. So I went through to the academy, and then you do like a demo run. So you do like a demo show with an interview, as if you were live on air. You do like some of the music, some of the guests and everything. And it was good fun. There was only 20 of us, and everyone in this group of 20 had radio experience. Someone was either at a radio show, someone had produced a show, someone somewhere had a connection with radio. So I genuinely thought I was the person they need to say, we don't just choose everyone with radio experience, we also choose this loser as well. So I was like, no way am I gonna get through again. Ring, ring, you've made the top 5. And I was like, what do you mean I've made the top 5? So I thought, you know what, I've probably got a chance of winning this thing, right? So Gumtree was sponsoring at the time. We had to submit a video of a gadget. It was either between beauty, property, and gadgets. And you had to make it relevant to the radio. So I just thought, you know what, let me choose the aux cord, because at the time, all of these memes were flying around with an aux cord, and I thought, well, Kiss is gonna need it. Anyway, put this video together. And on the 3rd of October, 2016, they called me live on the breakfast show and said, Swarzy, you're the new Kiss Chosen One. And I was like, my whole life is absolutely gonna turn upside down. So my background before that was, I went to university, I studied creative writing at Roehampton, and in my first year, I got involved with a company called Midnight Madness, and they host the UK's biggest summer basketball competition that showcases hoops and entertainment. So anyone can play basketball, you enter in, if you make it, basically we choose you as the winner and we take you abroad to play internationally. And so my experience, all my skills interviewing was just interviewing people who were no word of a lie, literally up here or so, and I was like here. I was like, can we sit down to just mask the fact that there's a height difference? They were like, no. So yeah, there's literally interviews of me, full arm, like, so how was the game, blah, blah, blah. But that's kind of where I honed in all my skills, and it's not until I got into radio did I really realise, wow, you know what, as a presenter, it's not about whether you're on radio or whether you're in front of the camera. Number one, it's about a good conversation. Do you sound like you are someone wants to listen to? The good thing about me, and I hope on this recording thing, don't take any of this as bragging, please don't, or any of this as, oh, I was born. A lot of this is like years and years of worth of rehearsing and having to do. So when I get to this stage and have the opportunity to share some of what I've just learnt along the way, it's not something that I was, just ready to go with. It's time. But just having a good conversation with someone and asking questions that they don't expect you to ask. So whether you interview an athlete or Craig David or a producer, everyone has breakfast. And so a number one good question that I always ask someone is, oh, so what did you have for breakfast today? And the minute you get people on food, generally, they just roll with it. They roll with the punches and they get into a zone of just feeling comfortable. So whether you're on radio or doing a podcast, number one thing is think of a question that relaxes your audience and also relaxes your guest. Because I found time and time again, the minute someone relaxes and forgets the camera's there or that their mic is on, the answers that they then give you for the questions you really want to ask are going to be so authentic and so real and hard-hitting that actually your audio or your interview will be not viral, or maybe it will be viral, but it will definitely be something that people want to tune into because you've bagged something that no one else has been able to get. Just a show of hands if you want to get into radio or if you're in radio. Good. Okay. Oh, everyone. Okay, cool. So things about radio, and from a radio perspective, as in presenting. Yeah, cool. Producing. Yeah, cool. Okay, sweet. So actually, 2 weeks or so ago, I got given cover to do the breakfast show, Kiss Breakfast Show. And those are big boots to fill. I mean, Ricky, Melvin and Charlie have held it down for like 10 years straight. And they do an awesome job. So coming into that role, it's like, oh my gosh, you're already like knocking at the ankles, right? But what I learned was you need a variation of content. So you need content that the mass audience is going to be able to relate to. So number one about your radio show, you need to think about who's going to be up at the time that your radio show is going out. So a breakfast show is a completely different vibe to my evening show when people are like, well, if they're young people listening to Kiss, they're either at uni hungover, they are, or any other day of the week hungover, or they're trying to revise, or they're doing the washing up. I'm 11 till midnight. So you think about your life and who you would talk to if you were doing that job. So breakfast show, you want to sound like you're awake. If you sound like you're half asleep, listeners are going to be like, I'm already turning off and going elsewhere. So you don't want to sound like you're asleep. But at the same time, you don't want to sound this energetic because people are like, what has she had for breakfast? I'm not into any of that. I need to calm down and drink a few coffees before I wake up. So you kind of need to get the balance right depending on the hours that you're going out on and also the audience that you're going out to. And when I talk about variation of content, you know what? When we do things at Kiss, we have something called Music Passion. So the way I'll cut up my links is Music Passion. There'll be a song in my playlist that I'm passionate about. It may be a new artist, it may be one of my favorite artists, it may be a beat, it may be they have the same producer as someone else. Whatever it is, whoever's listening to me genuinely needs to believe that I love the music that I'm playing. Because you can really tell when you are listening to someone who's doing radio that they do not like that music. And if they don't like it, what hope does the audience have of liking it? Zero, right? So you need to have some music passion. The other thing you probably need to do is be credible. It's really good when you listen to someone who's going to tell you something that either you didn't know or you're going to find interesting even if you did know anyway. So being credible is just sounding like you know what you're talking about. Sometimes, I won't reveal who it was, but there's a track out at the moment with a feature, with a remix, and someone's on the remix. And this person on radio said, oh, and this lousy person was on the feature. Now, number one, he's not lousy, he's pretty a top dog artist, right? But number two, you can't go around, even if you don't like something, you have to pretend you like it or just don't talk about it at all. Move over to the next track. But you need to sound credible. If the artist is coming to London for a gig, you want to give those dates. If you have seen something funny on their Instagram, like the other day I was on breakfast and Cardi B said she farted. I thought it was funny. Generally, I think people think it's funny, so I'm going to talk about it. But whatever your content is, it kind of needs to mirror who you are and what you would find interesting, so that the person listening, one, sounds like, oh yeah, Swaz would probably say something like that, so that, it sounds believable. Crunch and rolls. Crunch and rolls are really good. So a crunch and roll is a term in radio that gets you out of one song and into the next really quickly. So you might want to say something like, loving this one from Calvin Harris. That would be out of his song, Dua Lipa, One Kiss. Loving this from Calvin Harris and Dua Lipa, One Kiss, big tune right now. And then you want to intro who you are. It's Swarzy on Kiss, playing the best in new music right now. So give yourself, tell the radios, tell the audience of who you are and what you're doing, what your show serves that purpose for. And then the roll is into the next song. Massive tune right now from Craig David. You're going to love it. Check it out. It's Alone, or whatever the next song he's got dropping at the moment. So your crunch and roll is made of 3 parts. You want to get out of a song, you want to introduce who you are, always be telling your audience who you are and what your show's called or what the purpose is that it serves, and then you want to roll into the next song. And all of that, honestly, probably takes you about 10 seconds. And it's crazy because when you're on the radio, it feels so long, but actually as a listener, you're not listening for the presenter so much. You're possibly listening for more music, aren't you? Because that's kind of why you've come to that station. So that crunch and roll is a really good segue into two different songs. And then number one, cheese factor, is be yourself. When I was doing that, the competition, I don't know why I got through, and the only reason I probably did was because I was true to myself. I laughed about what things I thought were funny. I loved the music that I genuinely enjoy. There was no point going into Kiss and trying to big up an artist that I know zilch about, even if they're playing them on rotation, because the minute they sit me down and really pick my brains, I'm not going to have diddly to say, right? There is nothing credible that's going to come out of my mouth. But if you sound like yourself, the number one trick about radio is there's only so many hours in the day. If you try to squeeze yourself in any of those hours, you'll find that, and you're not credible about it, they'll slot you in with the person you're trying to sound like. Because the truth is, there is someone who already sounds like that if you're trying to mimic who that person is. And what I said the other day on a post, and someone said, oh, it's so true. I imagine if I spent all that time during the competition being someone else and then didn't get it, and the person that they hired was actually the person I was trying to be. That makes no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. So number one thing is, be yourself on radio. You need to come across the person you sound like so that the listener doesn't say, no, I don't believe that person. They need to say, I absolutely believe that person, and that is why I'm tuning into your show. That's the number one thing about radio. Because remember, it's not visual. It's all to do with someone's ears. It's not like TV or even podcasts if you film it. Radio is solely on their ears, so that you need to come across so good on your audio. So that's kind of some things I've picked up about radio. And number 10 or whatever top tips I've given you, be nice. Be nice to everyone in radio. So I had a really good friend called Ben, and 3 months or however long ago, Ben left and went to Radio 1. And I was genuinely heartbroken because when I started, I didn't have no friends. I was like Billy No Mates in this place. But Ben was one of my producers, so we used to always chop it up because he was in the studio opposite to me. And when he left for Radio 1, I was really upset. But I said, congrats, great job. And then he landed a BBC Sounds role to be the voice for the sports element. And they said to him, Ben, we're looking for a young voice to do BBC Sounds. Would you know anyone? And he said, yeah. Swarzy's over there at Kiss. She's great for it. Why don't you go check her out? They emailed me, hit me up. I went in for an audition. I was only meant to do one set of voice tracking. Before I knew it, they were like, what about your BBC Two voice? I was like, I didn't even know I've got a BBC Two voice. What about your Six Music voice? What about your One Extra voice? What about? And then after that, I got the gig to be BBC Sound's official young voice. And I was like, what on earth? And I'm not saying it's got to do with just being nice to Ben. I think it means be nice in general, but sometimes in radio, it's a small world. So if someone at Radio 1 is listening and they know someone, it's very likely that they know someone at Capital or Kiss or whoever. And of course, you be aware of who each other's competitors are. But radio is a small world. And so you will definitely find if you need to get in one way and you've got a friend in somewhere, you can normally knock on their door and think, oh, what do you think about this? And keep your name clean. You never want your name to be spoken badly of when you are not present in the room. You will be very shocked at how many people I've heard have not got a job or maybe lost a job just because they've said something, an offhanded comment that has then made them pay along the way. And so I will always say, always be nice, and equally it will come back to you that people will always say that you're nice as well. So that's a little bit about radio. I'm going to jump over into podcasts and then give you guys enough time for questions and whatnot. Podcasting. So I've got a podcast called the Litmus podcast, and it's all about dunking in questions and statements into a group of people, that the idea that the litmus will spark and different reactions and opinions will spring up. In my day-to-day job, Kiss is a commercial station, so it's branded content. Unlike BBC Sounds, BBC is obviously funded by the general public, and so there are two worlds that I'm in, that I wear two different hats on. So commercial-wise, I can talk about I've got a bit more freedom, or I can give my opinion a little bit more. But the minute you step over to BBC, you have to be objective. You have to make sure you're hitting every opinion so you don't look biased. And it's a great place to be in, to be honest. I'm not one-sided. I've kind of got the balance of both. And I would say hone that skill, because it's very often you will be put into an interview, and even if the person that you're interviewing thinks one way, it's always a good interview if you think the other, because the audience wants to have two opinions. Should I be over here with Swaz, or should I be over here here with whoever this guest is, where am I going to land? If it's going to be an agreeable interview all the way through, it's like, well, we've got the conclusion. Happy ever after, mate. Do you know what I mean? I've got to the end of the book. But you want to be making sure that you could sway at any point. It's a good tip to have when you're interviewing someone. And so the podcast really came out of, I just want to be me. I just want to say what I think. I want to have a platform where I want to talk about topics and discuss issues that maybe won't sit at KISS or won't sit at the BBC or won't sit anywhere else that I'm doing stuff. And kick it with friends. You know what? The best conversations in the WhatsApp group. And I was like, but this is gold. We should be talking about this on a podcast. And so, the Litmus podcast is a generic topic, first of all, because I didn't want to lock myself into one particular area. So if you've got a speciality and you know your stuff around Eddie Murphy films, create a podcast about Eddie Murphy films, because there is a niche audience who will go to you and you will not be beaten. But for me, I kind of like a little bit of everything, and I didn't want to be tied into one subject. So the Litmus changes every other week. We had the other day we had Marcel from Love Island come on, and his question was, is it better to be single or in a relationship? And so again, you're leaving the audience with that 50-50, where are they going to sit? Or the other one that we kicked off was with, what was it called? It was a good name because I came up with it. It was, do we fear our nightmares more than we chase our dreams? And a good title, actually, something I learned over at Radio 5. Whenever you have a title, make it 8 words long. That was something that blew my mind, you know. So Dotun Adebyo, he works at BBC Radio London and 5 Live, and he said to me, Swaz, when you think of a title for an interview, when you think of a title for a YouTube caption, when you think about a title in general, 8 words is usually a good maximum, and you want to have a title that leaves the audience on that 50-50 mark. Or you want to go in so devil's advocate almost that audience has to be like, what? How on earth could you believe that? How could you come back from that? So that's kind of the aim of what you want to package it into, an 8-worded sentence. And he's right, you know. If you look at radio, if you look at BBC in particular, their titles are very short, very punchy, and leaves you thinking, oh my gosh, what do I think about that? And the minute you get your audience to that level, you've got them, because they're going to listen and find out what you think, even if they're going to agree or they're going to disagree. So yeah, that's the Litmus podcast. We try to record every Tuesday evening. And a good thing about podcasts, have some in the bank, because you never know, like next week I'm going to be away and I'm not going to be in London, so I'm not going to be around to record. We've got 5 episodes in the bank that are topical. So they're not time sensitive. They're on a question that could sit anywhere in the year and can be dropped at any time. So if you're recording podcasts, I'd always say record an extra one every time you go to record, just so you've got some in the bank to keep you backed up as you go along, because you just never know when life, you know, even if it's for something that you need to go to or not, you just never know when you may need to pop up. With podcasts, what advice can I give you? Yeah, always start with your name. Always start with introing yourself, the name of the podcast, and who you've got on as a guest. It's always worth maybe recording an intro and an outro to top and tail your audio, purely because you get into the swing of it with your guest, or your guest is dry. Not that we've had any dry guests, but if you do have a dry guest and you're thinking, I need to wrap this up and get out, you may forget to do the outro or the intro. So if you record that ahead in advance, then you don't need to worry about that and you can focus on your content. And yeah, a good thing as well, if you're trying to be a presenter or you want to be into podcasting, I've learned is never to say, yeah, along the way. Only because on audio, in a room, it sounds all right and no one's really noticing it. But the minute you put your headphones in, you're like, Swaz, I beg you, shut up. Like, why are you saying, yeah, like 10 million times? And it's natural, isn't it? But you got to be a little bit conscious to not, the trick is just nod. And even as a presenter, I feel like I'm going 100 miles, there's so much to say. Even as a presenter, always smile. Even if you're not saying anything, always smile, because what happens is people will cut your screen for a thumbnail, and the minute my resting face is on that thumbnail, I'm not impressed. I'm always like, Swaz, why did you just not like take a photo or something and then use it as a thumbnail? But sometimes they just don't get your photo, they want a screenshot, and then bang, that is the front page of your interview. But if you're always smiling, even if they're talking about something that you've got nothing in common with, don't worry about that. The trick is not to worry about them. The trick is, how do I look on camera at any given point that I'm going to be stopped? And that same with podcasting. If you speak with a smile, it actually comes across very well. So when I do BBC Sounds, I will always go like this. BBC Sounds, music, radio and podcasts. But if I do this, BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcast. You see how it's not as warm? It just doesn't come across as well. And so I'm not saying Looney Tunes, Cartoon Network type of smiling, but I am saying you got to lift yourself a little bit because audio really is going to be stressing on your voice. And yeah, I think other than that about podcasts, we filmed ours only because social media right now is booming and things are engaging and people are scrolling. It is so hard to grab people's attention for longer than 15 seconds. So if you've got an interesting clip and you always want to cut up a clip where someone's wiling out, they might have said something that you think, yeah, that's the headline. Because another thing about radio and even TV or whatever is news is always going to be the subject that reaches the most people or affects the most people. That's news. So something that happened in London on Kiss isn't going to be news because Kiss is national. So when I went to like Leeds, they were like, oh yeah, I realised Leeds has its own world. It's got its own BBC Leeds, it's got its own radio Leeds because Leeds is where it's at for Leeds. Same way London's where it's at for London. But you need to have a story that's going to transcend city, country even, age group sometimes. Obviously keep it within your audience. But you know, a lot of it that we spoke about the other day on radio was about the Kardashians. And whether or not you know about the Kardashians, you've got Kanye doing his madness over there. You've got, you know, things about money and riches. So you would turn a Kardashian story out of the Kardashians and into, right, okay, well, what would you spend 5 million on? And then boom, you've got a story where people are phoning up and they're like, I'd spend... It doesn't actually matter about whatever Khloe Kardashian did. I've jumped off of that story and landed into something else that is going to be newsworthy and engaging for more than one audience. Does that make sense? So always go at the angle where, yeah, people on their timeline are going to be scrolling. And to be honest, that's how they do it, you know. They'll always say to me, Swaz, have you seen anything on the timeline? Because people are always on the timeline. People are always retweeting, they're always sharing, they're always posting. And if this has gone viral, most chances are, if you talk about it, most people have seen it. So your good bet is always social media. Social media is your friend. The only minute social media is not your friend is when you need to distinguish between who you are and who you are on social media. So like for me, I get loads of jobs on social media. My social media is work purposes. I want to be showing what I'm doing. But if I want to have a rant, depending on where the rant is, probably the WhatsApp chat is a little bit more appropriate for that, only because if I'm ranting about something and then a future employer is like, oh yeah, we don't agree with that opinion, I've probably lost myself whatever job that could have potentially been. So just be savvy. Social media is good, but there's a time and a place for what you want to say depending on the content that you want to give. At the moment, I've learned since volunteering is that in any other space, radio, TV, just space, there is a huge gap because no one knows what the 25-year-olds to about the 40-year-olds think. They don't know what you think. They don't know what you care about. They don't know what you give a monkeys about. They don't know what you think about Brexit. They don't know what you spend your money on. They don't know, they don't know, they don't know. So the minute you say, oh, actually, I do know, they're like, right, okay, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And it's a great time to be young, you know. It's a great time to be young. So if you've got an opinion about something, if you've got a strong opinion that falls into this category or that category, write up not a pilot, what do you call it, like a premise where you would give an overview of an idea and then you can go to commissioners and say, look, this is kind of what I would do. This is what I would do in episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. This is who I would talk to. This is the language and the flavour of how I would do it. And so the thing that I'm shooting at the moment is about climate change, and it's all about how I, as someone who's a young girl living in the city, needs to interact with that. Now, that can sound pretty boring, but if you go through people's lives and you document how you do things, that again reaches a far audience because everyone is ordering Ubers. Everyone is on their phone. Everyone needs to eat. If you go at these angles where everyone knows what you're talking about, actually you've got something quite special there because people can relate, but equally it comes from your narrative and from your voice. And so that's kind of what I'm learning about TV, to be honest, is you tend to watch things that, one, you're interested in the topic, but also you want to see it from that person's eyes. You want to go on that journey with them to see where they land at the end. And so, yeah, I think TV is a little bit different to radio. One, because you have to do so many takes. The thing about radio with Kiss, you have to be a one-hit wonder. You can stumble, and I've stumbled a few times. The other day I said something silly and I shouldn't have done. I basically just stumbled over the word best and British. So if you put that bruh at the beginning of best, you'll find what word I said. So yeah, no one was awake to hear it, hopefully. But with TV, obviously you can take the cuts and you can edit that, and that's good fun. But I think that's something that I've learned to do on camera. Have you heard the expression 10,000 hours? Yeah. If you put in... Yeah, exactly. And not to say that I'm an expert, not so whatsoever, but I've been hosting a very long time. I started off at school doing assemblies and doing like British Black History Month and drama scenes and improv-ing and having to stand in for people. Then I became a Christian in 2007, and I went to a church down the road who every Monday would run a drama group. So every Monday you would battle it out between two groups, and if you won the battle, you got to perform your drama on the Friday. But best believe, by the time the Friday come around, we can't remember what we did on the Monday. Someone's dropped out, you got to fill in, you got to host, you got to do all these things. And so really, this youth group at my church, I just picked up all of these skills that now on radio I use like I'm cooking. Like they're my spices, they're the utensils, they're everything that goes into the meal. And at the time when I was young, I had no idea that was the kind of the language I was using or the skills I was honing. So even, I'd throw that over to you guys. What is it that you've done all your life that you just never thought, oh gosh, how could that feed into my work? Whether it's writing or whether it might be cooking, to be honest. It might be, I don't know, whether you go out and you're a traveller or whatever it is, you usually find that what you've been doing for a very long time in your life, those skills are quite transferable into whatever thing you want to go into. And so, yeah, whether that's TV, radio, podcasting, I assume you guys like having conversations. I assume you like music in some way, shape or form. I assume you like to create content. And so those are kind of the tips for radio. You must be yourself regardless. And a good thing as well, commissioners will come back to you because you're passionate about something. There's nothing worse. Even when I talk to people, I'm like, oh, so what are you passionate about? I'm like, bruh, you got to be passionate about something. Even if it's football, even if it's TFL, even if it's a rant, whatever it is, you've got to have something to give. Otherwise, what are you doing here? Do you know what I mean? You can't just be sponging off. You kind of got to grab a topic and put your own spin on it, which takes the pressure off trying to be original. There is no point trying to reinvent the wheel. It's all been done. Now your point is, okay, well, that's what it is. I need to think about it how I would do it from my perspective. And that's what's making you original. Because no one could be a Swaz. No one could be a you. No one could be a Speedy. No one could be anyone around here other than you. And so it's only you're taking your spin that a commissioner or a radio station is going to come back to because it's authentic. No one's going to outdo you. I think in radio, these things are like your laces in your shoes. They're like, okay, if I need to run and I need to dash and get out of this song, crunch and roll, crunch and roll, crunch and roll. Whether it's at the BBC, I've been on the 5 Live and seen Dotun having to think, oh gosh, that's the time. I need to get out of this and into that. But equally, sometimes your laces can be pulled a little bit, looser, and you got a little bit more giveaway, and you can kind of throw in a bit more content. You want to say shouts to, Frank, who's at work right now, locked in, or you want to say, oh my gosh, the bus this morning was da-da-da-da-da. And you can have that breathable space. That was what breakfast taught me, to be fair. There was a lot of space to breathe. And it's good because if you co-host with someone, the trick is even if you pre-record, always try a story the first time round, because your first time reactions are usually your most funniest, your most authentic. The minute you've done it, you have to do it again. It's kind of like, oh gosh, I know what you're going to say, you know what I'm going to say. And so sometimes, we'll pre-record something just to test it out. But usually, if you've got a good co-host and you're confident and you can do it in one take, actually you can do it in one take. But equally, you can just use the beginning. Okay, that was Calvin Harris. And the other day when he was at the Brits, he said, no one knows that I'm Scottish. I've never been to Scotland. And then you got some dilemma about Scottish people and Scotland and rare. And then you got to think, okay, but I actually need to get back to Ariana Grande. How am I going to go from here, Scotland, into Ariana Grande? Does she like haggis? I don't know. Well, here's a new one from blah, blah, blah. Check it out. Here's Break Up With Your Boyfriend, I'm Scared, or something. Well, it's not actually that. Well, yeah, whatever the song is. We played a lot of Ariana Grande recently, so I should know. But yeah, I think you can, that's the template. Use it as a template, that's the best word. And then you can fill it and put different ingredients in and jazz it up how you like. But that is the kind of nuts and bolts, I would say, of what I've learned to do with radio. No, thank you. Thank you, guys.
ask you a question. Are you a petty Betty when it comes to breakups?